Fairly often when I'm shopping at thrift stores, I come across something I have no idea what I'm looking at, and I'll have to make the decision of whether or not to buy it on the spot with whatever limited research I'm willing to put in store. However, some decisions can be very easy. Anything made by Roland with a double-digit price tag and MIDI ports is probably a good bet. And what I ended up with this time is a Roland TD-7 percussion sound module, or put another way, a Roland MIDI drum synthesizer. At this point, one of my XLR cables failed and my mic cut out, so I'm going to be doing a little bit of overdubbing here. Now, the Roland TD-7 looks a little bit different, and that's because it's actually made by Boss, but Boss is still Roland. Boss is a subdivision of Roland, and they make more band-oriented type devices, focusing especially on guitar pedals. Apparently, Roland thought it was a good fit to have Boss make this, but then they changed the branding back to Roland, so that's a little strange. Inside, it's a full Roland chipset, so aside from how it's physically constructed on the exterior, it's all Roland inside. Except for one slight problem. This uses a Boss power supply, and unlike the 9 volts negative center Roland power supplies, this one's AC. As you may have guessed, I didn't get this with the original power supply, and they aren't common or cheap. And they are non-standard, and they don't use the typical 5.5mm barrel jack. Now, at the same thrift store that I found the Roland TD-7, I also found this power supply. It has the exact same ratings as the original Boss power supply, but with a different connector. I'm guessing the previous owner bought this as a replacement for their original Boss power supply when they lost it or it failed, but they didn't realize they got the wrong one until it was too late and donated it. But I'm going to be able to fix it by adding another powered connector that will work. So let's get this open and take a look at what I'm in store for. Inside, it looks like this thing uses DC. We have a 7806 here and a 7805 there, and we see plus 6 and 5 volts on the circuit board, but there are also -6 and -5 volts marked on the PCB, which are strange because I don't see a 7906 or 7905, but apparently it needs it and it's generating it somewhere amongst all these chips. So I couldn't power this directly by replacing the power supply with something DC. Now I'm just going to solder onto the tabs of the barrel jack so I don't have to remove the board because it's pretty well in there and I don't really feel like getting into this too much. It's going to be really easy to wire this up though because Roland likes to add this weird little cable hook on the back to act as a protection from pulling the cable out. So I can just remove that and handily feed the wires I need right through those two holes, and I don't have to drill a hole or anything. It's a nice clean mod. And after getting the wires soldered on, I'm very happy with the results, and this should work out just fine. Oh, it didn't work. Oh, I didn't notice that, but the pins sticking out of the power supply are very, very broken. Yeah, there is no way I'm going to use that now. NES power supplies are 9 volts AC and use a 5.5mm barrel jack, so we can try that out. This is only 1.3 amps though, so I'm going to want to make sure I don't overdraw this. I'll throw the whole thing on a kilowatt to make sure I don't go past the rated maximum on there. Alright, I've got the NES power supply plugged in the back. I have it on a kilowatt, and man, this thing's drawing 2.1 watts without anything on. I can unplug it and it's drawing the same amount of power. That's pretty bad. But anyway, let's try this out. Oh, success! I love the 16:2 display there with the custom characters being sent to it. Alright, looks like we're in. So, we are at 6.7 watts, that's not a problem. Let's put this back together and try it out. Alright, I've put it all back together and it's good to go now, and I've connected it to a pair of Roland MA12Cs I recently got. I don't think I own a more appropriate pair of speakers to use with this, and we're going to check out one of the demos that this comes with. We're going to listen to the Pages demo, which is a little bit shorter than the Freestyle demo it starts you out with, but it still gives you a really good feel for how this thing sounds. And clues you into something I've seen in a couple of Roland products now, and we'll take a look at that right after this demo. Yeah, this thing sounds really good, but it cheated a little bit in the demo there. I don't know if you would have caught that because it just kind of made sense for it to be there. But listen to this part again. It is clearly playing a bass line. So it has other instruments in it, and in a couple of other spots throughout the demos, I heard guitar sound effects as well. Very brief, because I didn't want to catch your attention with it, but they're in there. Now, I find that particularly interesting because my Roland Atelier 1890S has something similar going on, and we'll take a look at that sometime, but it also has hidden instruments that you're not allowed to play, and yeah, I mean, you can't play those on here. I have my keyboard set up, the drum pads are connected to MIDI channel 10, which is where drums are. And the keyboard here is set to channel 0. But the problem is, that does nothing. And MIDI channel 1 doesn't do anything either, so it's not just a weird configuration issue, it just doesn't let you play those instruments, which is fine. It's a drum module, it's not meant to do everything. But I can actually go ahead and set this to 10, which will give me more instruments than the 8 buttons available here. Alright, so while we have this connected, we can check out some of the sounds that it has. There is 808. That one always sounds good. But yeah, there are a lot of good sounds in here, so apparently this is going to be the quickest way through this. There were a couple in here that I really liked. I liked 90s. That one, yeah, that one's very, very 90s. Rave wasn't bad. It's more subtle. Dopey was kind of funny. And I haven't actually played around with these on here. But it is a full synthesizer. It's got lots of, well, I mean, not a synthesizer, you guys know. So when you start to dig around in the menus, you can configure stuff like change the pitch of certain drum instruments for those triggers, and that's pretty cool, but that's exactly what this is made for. This is meant to be a full drum implementation. Matter of fact, let's get to what those plugs are on the back that we kind of glossed over earlier because they're very critical to the DNA of what this thing is. Now, so far I've shown this thing as a MIDI module, but really, this is probably used most often without any MIDI being involved at all. All of these connectors on the back, with the exception of these two, are for trigger inputs. So this device can have drum pads connected directly to it as a digital drum kit, an electronic drum kit. So this can be used as a full drum replacement for traditional acoustic percussive drums. I was able to find out some interesting information about those drum pads. If we look in the manual for the PD-8, we can see the output of it is acoustic. Now these drum pads are velocity sensitive, and there are a couple of ways you could do that, but you would basically always need some kind of transducer. Now in the process of researching this video, I was able to find someone who tore one of these apart and connected right underneath the pad you strike was a piezo. Now I don't really have a need to set this up as a digital drum kit, so investing the kind of money it would take to get the pads and everything isn't really worth it to me. But I still want to try it out, and I am nothing if not resourceful, and I actually have something already that could possibly work. The Rockband Portable Drum Kit. These are separate drum pads that you strike with a real drumstick, and they use a 3.5mm audio jack to connect to the controller. Now it's very easy to put a mono connector on there, and bam! It is a 1/4 inch jack, just like the TD-7 needs. But what's to say this is going to work? Rockband doesn't have any kind of velocity sensitivity. Well, I opened one up. I find the Rockband peripherals to mimic the real musical instruments a lot more than they have any right to, well, aside from the plastic guitars, because this drum pad has a real piezo in it, so it is effectively the same thing as a real MIDI drum pad. Well, electronic drum pad. Now, there is a slight problem. The Roland TD-7s are able to change the polarity of the connector, and to do that on here, I would either have to cut and solder the wires or try and desolder from the piezo itself, which seems like a very bad idea. So I'm going to go ahead and not do that. So there is the potential the polarity will be wrong on this, and what that really means is you miss the biggest strike because it starts out as a negative swing, then picks back up to a positive swing. So this may not work that well, but we'll be able to try it and find out because we can very easily connect it. Now, the TD-7 here has stereo inputs on the interface. Now, the only real difference here between a mono and stereo drum pad is this one is for the rim. So the PD-7s allow you to strike on the rim of the drum pad and achieve a different sound, but the TD-7's manual states that you can use a mono drum pad without any problem and it will work just fine. So I'm already covered here. I've tried to look into this as much as I can because these aren't inexpensive and it's really cool. Here we have the Rockband portable drum kit pads hooked up to a real drum controller, and this does work. Now, there's a problem. Actually, there are a lot of problems here. I have this turned up really, really loud because the signal coming out of these is very weak, which is one of the signs of reversed polarity. So these would need to be modified to work with this, and I don't really want to do that because they are a full Rockband drum kit, so I'd rather not change them. If I were serious about this, I would buy some of these that have been orphaned from their controller, because this came with a small controller. I have it. I don't know where it is right now, so I guess these have been orphaned. But I do know I own the controller, and I don't want to separate it. So, yeah, if you were crazy and wanted to do this like me, then getting some of these for cheap would possibly be a solution, but there are a lot of drawbacks. Just hold on, you won't want to do that when we're done here. Another thing is the foot pedal. Now, you've seen this in a different video where I use this as a sustain. That worked out all right, but that was because this is a switch, not a piezo. So somewhere in there's an actual mechanical switch that closes and makes contact. The drum pad on this for bass drum would actually be a piezo with a well, I don't know what it's called, the cloth thing that you wrap around that you strike the drum pad with. So this doesn't work right. The foot pedal wouldn't work right with this, so you can't do that. Now there's a lot of problems. Okay, so the sensitivity outside of the drums do nothing at all. It's very dependent on being on the inside. Well, the middle. You have to be right on the center. That's the only place it works. And it's extremely, extremely picky about that. The sensitivity, the velocity does work. It's just really hard to get. I found the best way to do it was to take something like this, go right over the center, and then hit it with the bottom. Because it's so hard to nail the exact center where you need to be. Also, the Rockband portable drum kit drumsticks suck because the bottom half is threaded with plastic and the top half is threaded with metal. So, yeah, okay. This works, but it doesn't work. I mean, if you're playing drums, you're going to be whacking all over, and you can't always hit the dead center. And I mean like the dead center. It's the size of a dime is where it's really sensitive. So, yeah, these really don't work. I assume Rockband, or the controller that runs these, really amplifies the signal, and it's a little bit easier because it's just sending out a digital yes, no, you hit it. Now, I do know for sure that the real Rockband drums, when you're playing Rockband, are fairly bad in that you need to be somewhere in the middle when you hit for it to actually register. So even on Rockband, it's not perfect. A hit to the outside doesn't work. But when you're playing drums, you're kind of supposed to hit the middle too, so that makes a little bit of sense. So these do their job. I assume the real Roland drum pads are more forgiving, and they sound better and correct when you hit them because it's made to do that. But this does kind of sort of work. It's just bad at it. Alright, so we've played the demos, we've connected a keyboard and checked out some of the sounds, we've connected drum pads to show that it works as a full drum trigger, we've checked out some of the different instruments, we've pretty much gone through everything you're supposed to with one of these. So let's do something you're not. I'm going to connect this to my 486 and we'll see what games sound like through it. Now, we still have the problem of this just being a drum machine, despite having some sneaky hidden sounds in there. So I'm going to pair it with the SC55 and just mix the channels together, disabling MIDI channel 10, which is drums again, on the SC55, and hearing what that sounds like. So let me get that set up. Okay, I have the 486 connected to the SC55 and the TD-7 at the same time. I am able to mute MIDI channel 10 on the SC55 so we can hear the TD-7 only, and they are being mixed in with the game sounds. It is fully set up and is working out very well. I've already tested a few games to pick out some ones that are well representative of this, but I think it's time we check out how some games sound on here. So let me fire up Doom and you can hear what that's like. Now for E1M1, Doom uses the standard drums, and the difference between the TD-7 and the SC55 wasn't that extreme. Now let's try Sigil and its E1 or E5 M2 and see the difference there, because it uses the room drum and I think it makes a big difference. I think the room sound effect in the TD-7 sounds much better than the one in the SC55. Now, another game I think benefits at least a little bit from the TD-7 is Descent. It uses the 808 for most of the drums for the title theme, and the 808 on the TD-7 has just a bit more punch. It's a bit sharper at the beginning than the SC55, and it's probably just due to the sample sizes. The SC55 has to fit a lot more samples in one space than the TD-7. Remember, these are about the same time period, so despite how they look, the TD-7 might look a little bit newer. It's mostly because it's really built by their Boss division. That's why it looks so different. So yeah, let's hear Descent and see how that compares. So this thing's fantastic, and everyone should add it to their DOS setup, right? Well, no. Of course, there are exceptions to this, and unsurprisingly, Duke 3D is one of them. Now, this game is pretty brutal on MIDI devices, and this is no exception. Now, I'm going to use the setup program here to play the music, because this lets me test between Sound Canvas specific, which this is not a Sound Canvas device, and general MIDI. Now, on the two things here, it really shouldn't make that big of a difference because it is Roland, but it could possibly make a difference, so I just want to rule that out. So, without ado, let's listen to the TD-7 and Grab Bag. Alright, so Grab Bag sucks on here, and it's not down to general MIDI or Sound Canvas settings. The TD-7 just isn't handling it well, and by that I really mean it isn't handling it well. I don't think it's the instrument selection. At some point when it's playing, it has some kind of MIDI buffer overflow type problem, and it just kind of lags behind sometimes when it comes to the music. The drums in this can be pretty fast. I mean, let me play it back and we'll see if we can get the MIDI issue to show up, and listen for the drums to be delayed. It kind of stumbled there at the end. Now, I'm not sure what the deal is. Well, this is just because I'm stopping the music in the middle. I don't know why it's not showing the MIDI issue there, but it does almost always show it. Like, if I start the game for real here, it'll probably show it. There we go. Now, this is interesting, because sometimes it starts up with a different instrument than xylophone, but not this time. But yeah. MIDI buffer full, yeah, it's just not handling Grab Bag well. But some of the other MIDIs in Duke 3D still sound good, so let's check out Stalker, the music for level 1. So the TD-7 is definitely not going to be for every game and for everyone, and this is especially true if you look at how much these go for. You're definitely not going to get your money's worth out of it. But if you happen to stumble upon one like I did, it's worth checking out. I hope you guys enjoyed this look at the Roland TD-7 and all of its features, of which it does have quite a few for just being a drum machine. But for now, that's everything I have to say about that. If you guys want to support the channel, I am on Patreon, but for now, I'll see you next time. One last thing before I go. If you want to hear more of this song, or any of the 3 demo tracks from the TD-7, I uploaded complete recordings of them to my second channel, so you should head over there if you want to check those out.